picture a pyramid, the wider and broader and more sturdy you can make that foundation, then the higher the potential peak, which is why the best players and best teams in the world are in the best shape and move really, really well. See, if you guys can get your players just a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, if you can improve their hand-eye coordination, their mobility, their reaction, then they can perform the skills of the game, shooting, passing, rebounding, defending, and ball handling. They can perform their skills at a much higher level. They can perform their skills with more efficiency, and they can perform their skills for longer before fatigue sets in, which again is why the best players and the best teams in the world are in the best shape and move really, really well. Now, in addition to improving performance on the court, you will also help your players bulletproof their body against injury. Especially even now in the NBA, which most people can agree is about the upper 1% of the human population as far as athleticism, and yet we've seen a rash of catastrophic knee injuries over the last 5 or 6 years. Starting with MVP Derrick Rose, major knee injuries, and these guys are the best athletes on the planet. So we need to make sure that we as coaches are taking steps towards bulletproofing our players' bodies. Starting from the ground up, we have to bulletproof their ankles, their knees, their hips, their shoulders. And it is my humble opinion that if players like Derrick Rose would have begun that type of training when he was 8, 9, 10 years old, his body would be more durable now. Because you can't question Derrick Rose's athleticism, you can't question the fact that he plays in the NBA. So he has the best doctors, the best trainers, the best equipment, the best recovery techniques. He has the best of everything. But you know what? He didn't get the best of everything until he was 20 years old. So that means the 20 years prior to that, his body was built like a house of cards. So you can blow it over. And we're seeing that rampant in the NBA now. So for those of you that work with younger players, that's great. I really and truly hope you start to implement the stuff that I'm going to share with the younger players. For those of you that work with older players, players that are already in high school, it's not too late. We need to start implementing these things on a very regular basis. Now, what makes this clinic very unique, and I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to speak alongside my friends Drew and Spencer and Rick and Rich, is we form a very comprehensive group. And that's why I really believe that this clinic in particular is arguably the most comprehensive basketball clinic anyone's ever put together, because you've got people addressing performance, the mental side, which hardly anyone ever addresses, the skill side, which Drew will address, and then the culture and the X's and O's and the basketball IQ side. So you guys are getting a chance to hear a very well-rounded group of presenters. And that is actually how you develop basketball players. You build them like a pyramid. And I already said that the base level of the pyramid happens to be what I specialize in, which is their body, which is their movement, it's their athleticism, it's how they flow on the court. Well, the next level is, and you're going to be in for a real treat when you get to see Drew later, is the skill side. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter how athletic your players are. If they can't shoot, pass, rebound, defend, or handle the ball, you're going to be in for a long season. They're not very good basketball players. And then if you take it one more level up, which is what Spencer led off with today, is the mind, is the brain. That's part IQ, knowing how to play the game, but a big portion of that is mental toughness. Because it does not matter how athletic you are, and it does not matter how skilled you are, if you lack mental toughness or you do not know how to play the game, then there's a ceiling on how good of a player you can be. And then the very top of that pyramid is what's called heart, which is grit, which is motivation, which is determination, which is perseverance. And these are things as coaches, we can't necessarily give these things to players. We can model them. We can live our lives in a way that will inspire our players, but either you have a heart or you don't. And we can't give that final piece to players. But no matter how athletic your kids are, it doesn't matter how skilled they are, and it doesn't matter how tough they are, if they don't have a heart and they don't care, they don't have passion, once again, there's going to be a limit on how good of a player they can be. But we always need to keep this pyramid in perspective, and we need to make sure that we are addressing every aspect of the pyramid in different proportions depending on the age you're working with, but this is stuff that needs to be done on a year-round basis. Now, I've got a couple of thoughts, and I realize I'm coming from the States, and that your seasons here may be a little bit different than our seasons in the States. I'm very thankful and fortunate to work at a prestigious high school in Washington, D.C., DeMatha Catholic High School. So we're dealing with 14 to 18-year-old, all boys in my case. We're a boys' school. This, for us, is technically the off-season. Our high school season ended in March. Unfortunately, it did not end the way that we wanted it to end, so now we're in the off-season, but most of our players play AAU basketball, which I believe is simply called club basketball here. And so our players play basketball on a year-round basis. I'm under the assumption that most of your players play for someone on a year-round basis. So with that being said, there's not really a distinct off-season the way there was when I played. I'm not that old, or at least I don't think I'm that old. I'm almost 40. But 20 years ago when I played, when the high school season was over, I had 6 to 7 months to prepare my body, to prepare my mind, to prepare my skills for the next season. And today, kids are not necessarily getting that chunk of time because they're always playing. But regardless, you have to have some type of mindset with your players about what is in season and what is out of season. Spencer mentioned it earlier today, and he hit it right on the head. It is my belief that the off-season, the focal point needs to be on player development. During the season, the focal point needs to be on team development. And I just want you to have that kind of ideology as you work with your players on a year-round basis. Now notice I said focal point. I didn't say that that's the only thing you can do. Certainly during the off-season, for you to build culture and chemistry with your players and your team is a great thing. And I certainly hope that during the season, you make time for some player development in your practices so that your players can continue to get better. But I'm talking generally speaking as a focal point. Now, a couple of things in regard to schedule, and this is true for you guys as coaches, this is true for your players. Your schedule tells me your priorities. That's what you don't have to tell me anything. You have to show me your calendar and I'll tell you what's important to you. As a performance coach, and even a couple of you have already asked questions about this, every player, especially in the United States, they want to jump higher. Because let's admit, jumping's sexy. Everybody wants to see running, jumping, and dunking. That's what's on SportsCenter Top 10. Every male in the United States wants to jump higher, and that's what they always ask me. So they'll say, Coach Stein, how do I improve my vertical jump? I'll say, easy. I've got a program here you can follow. It requires that you do this, this, and this. And then their next thing is, I can't do this, this, and this because I'm playing AAU, because I've got this, because I've got that. I can't do that. And I just said, okay, then you don't want to improve your vertical jump. It's easy. Don't tell me you want to improve something and then tell me you're not willing to make the sacrifice and commitment required to make that improvement. So what and I'm trying really hard not to use profanity, you're really giving me a load of you know what if you tell me that you want to get better in this aspect, but you're not willing to do it. So your schedule tells me what's important to you. And if you're playing AAU basketball all the time, then improving your vertical jump is not important. No matter what you say, no matter how long you look me in the eye, it is not important. So you make sure that you guys as coaches understand and your players understand that what's on your calendar is important. And you can kind of say the same thing with habits. Habits tell me the truth. I have never met a player when I've asked them, or when I say, do you want to be the best player that you're capable of? I've never had anyone say no. The answer is always yes, of course, Coach Stein, I want to be the best player that I'm capable of. And then all I have to do, and I know this sounds a little creepy, is follow them around for 48 hours. See what they do for 48 hours, and I will know if they're serious about being the best player that they're capable of. If they're staying up till 3 in the morning playing video games or on Facebook, they don't really want to be the best player that they're capable of, because your sleep is a crucial part of your performance. If they come into the gym and just kind of casually shoot, give you some of this, we got to make sure you go between the legs 52 times, and then put it up, you don't want to be the best player that you're capable of, because that doesn't help you be the best player that you're capable of. So our habits tell us, as coaches, everything that we need to know about our players. So it's good for you to have communication, and it's good for you to talk to your players regularly, but make sure you're a student of their habits. A couple of the kind of quotes, and if anybody follows me on social media, you know I like real quick sound bites. And we use this all the time, and I'll say this to our players at DeMatha. When school starts in September, if you still have a weak hand, you wasted your summer. You wasted your summer if you still have a weak hand. Because we don't want players with a weak hand. Everyone here was born with a dominant hand. That's usually the hand that you open up doors with, you brush your teeth with, and you eat with. But in the game of basketball, with the exception of shooting 30-footers with your offhand, you need to be able to do everything equally well with both hands. You need to be able to dribble with both hands, you need to be able to pass the rock, share the sugar with both hands, and you absolutely need to be able to finish around the cup. So there should be no weak hands with your players once they've reached a certain age or level. But we all know that that's not the case. But we tell our players flat out, if you want to be the best player that you're capable of, you can't have a weak hand. And if you show up next season with a weak hand, you wasted your summer. And I'm going to give you guys some tools on helping to improve that. As far as what players need to work on, and Drew does a tremendous job of addressing this, the most important word that you need to walk away from this clinic with is purpose. Everything you do has to have a distinct purpose. Distinct purpose. Now, from a performance standpoint, The number one reason that I do everything that I do, and every drill and every exercise, is to bulletproof the body, is to protect the boys and girls that we work with from injury. Now, we can't prevent injury. That is impossible. There's an inherent risk with everything that we do when we play a sport, but we can take some prudent steps to reduce the occurrence and the severity of injury. And that's most of everything I'm going to show you today has the underlying foundation of we need to bulletproof players' bodies. That's number one. So when I'm looking at a drill that I'm going to do, the first thing I ask is this going to make this player more resilient to injury? And the answer should be yes. Now, number two is this going to improve their performance? Is this going to improve their capacity for work to play the game of basketball? And that's my second thing that I need to be able to check off the list. I don't want to get into it too deep right from the beginning, but, and I know you don't use miles, you guys use kilometers, but in the States, there's still basketball coaches that make their players run 2 miles. That is not very specific to the game of basketball. Basketball is a very short duration, high intensity, everything is predicated on speed and your ability to change direction. So, in my opinion, having players simply run 2 miles is not the most purposeful way to condition. Now, I'm not saying that there is no value in that, but if we're trying to pick the most purposeful way to train, I don't think running 2 miles is the most purposeful way. Because again, when you start looking at some of these aspects of athleticism, balance, for example, every single skill in the game of basketball, every skill, especially everybody's favorite skill of shooting, drastically decreases when you are off balance. So if we can train our players to get in, stay in, and move from a position of balance, it's going to improve their ability to do everything else on the court. So balance is one of the most underrated aspects of basketball athleticism. I know the kids want to run fast and jump high. That's cool, that's sexy, that's hot. I get it. And I'm going to give you tools to run faster and jump higher. But I also need you to work on balance. Basketball is played at a very fast pace, but it's not a speed game. If I take these kids right now and I line them up on the baseline, and whoever can run 94 feet the fastest uninterrupted, that means nothing in the game of basketball. Absolutely nothing. Basketball is about starting and stopping. It's about changing direction. It's about reaction. It's about acceleration and deceleration. So I don't care who can run from there to there fastest. I care who can get there first. Who can get there first? Who can get there first? That's what matters in the game of basketball. So with that being said, in order for your training programs and your warm-ups to be purposeful, we have to be reinforcing these areas of athleticism that players need on the court. So if all we're doing is running sprints from inline to inline, certainly there'll be a cardiovascular response to that, but we're not training their body in the movements that they need. So you're going to have players spend an entire offseason running 94 feet back and forth at a slow pace, and then as soon as you blow the whistle or the jump ball goes up, they need to be able to sprint there, change direction, and then sprint there. So we need to make sure that everything we do is purposeful. If you want to break that down even more, not all basketball players are created equal. What's a good shot for me might not be a good shot for him. If I'm a much better shooter than he is, then what a good shot is a sliding scale based on you guys, the coach. So if your players ever have any question of what they need to work on when they're not with you or in the off season, it needs to be what's within their role. You guys think about your team right now, and you have players that have a different role. And you need to make sure that if they're trying to be as purposeful as possible, their focus is working on the role they have on your team.